Hey, good day, everyone. Welcome again to our class on inquiries, investigations, and immersion. Naman na muna ang lato-lato na laro. Let's start our session with a game called The Who. So I'll be giving description, and once description fits you, you simply stand. Okay? John, sino sa inyo ang middle child? Okay. Sino naman sa inyo ang mahilig humawak ng mobile device? Yung hindi mapakali pag wala kang mobile device? In short, sino sa inyo ang nomophobia? Yan. Description. Sino naman sa inyo yung pag nasa paligid ng maraming tao, parang nauubusan kagad ng energy? Yung tingin ng mga tao sa iyo ay tahimik ka, yung maunti lang ang iyong kaibigan, yung ina-enjoy mo pag tahimik ang iyong paligid. In other words, sino sa inyo ang introvert? Okay. This, number 4 description. Sino sa inyo ang never been in a relationship? Hello, hello. And sino naman sa inyo ang been in 2 or more relationships already? Okay. To those who participated in this activity, well, congratulations! Sabi nga kasi ni Aristotle, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Now, why did we have this activity? It's because when it comes to research, it's very important that you not only know yourself, but you should also know the people around you, especially those people who will serve as your participants. So when it comes to research, hindi pwedeng pasagot lang ng pasagot ng instrument. You should know the value of selection criteria. So what do we mean by this? The term selection criteria refers to the qualities that you are considering whenever you find your source of data. So parang katulad sa job interview or sa mga naghahanap ng trabaho, meron ka dapat sineset na criteria or qualities bago mo i-hire yung tao para sigurado na magagawa niya yung trabaho. Now let's see the importance of setting the selection criteria before you conduct any data collection. So let's try out this one. I'll be giving the selection criterion, and together with this, I'll be showing you 3 research titles. All you need to do is, based on the given selection criterion, identify which research title makes use of the given selection criterion. Okay? Let's try the first one. First selection criterion is people with mobile device all the time. Which research title makes use of this selection criterion? Life of children with middle child syndrome, case study of adults with phone addiction, or impact of introversion on adults' life satisfaction? And the answer is, that's right. It's the case study of adults with phone addiction. Now let's have the second one. Selection criterion is, I've never been in a relationship, or people who have never been in a relationship. Which research title makes use of this criterion? Post-pandemic phenomenological study on introverts, increasing number of Filipino single women, or the relationship between intimacy and health? And the answer is, you are correct. Increasing number of Filipino single women. Now let us try this last one. Criterion is middle child. Which research title makes use of middle child? Case study of adults with phone addiction, the relationship between intimacy and health, or life of children with middle child syndrome. And obviously, the answer is life of children with middle child syndrome. Now, the golden question is, why is it important that you clarify first the selection criteria before conducting any data collection? Yes, that's right. Clarifying first the selection criteria will help you produce or gather accurate results. Meaning, matutumbok mo yung mga sagot na hinahanap mo kung sa simula pa lamang ay kinlarify mo muna or nilinaw mo ano ba yung mga katangian ng respondents o participants na hinahanap mo para sumagot ng iyong questions. Okay? After knowing what you're looking for, what if you have so many available sources of data? Meaning, ang daming tao na nag-fit dun sa selection criteria na sinet mo, ang daming pwedeng maging potential respondents or potential participants. Paano ko ngayon mapipili? O diba, sana pinipili? Now, this leads us to our second lesson, which is population and sample. So, sana naalala nyo pa ito mula sa inyong statistics class and PR2 class. Sige nga, kung naaalala nyo pa, between the two illustrations, alin dyan ang sample, alin dyan ang illustration ng population. Tama, yung mas malaki, yun ang population. Samantalang yung mas maunti naman, yun ang sample. Basic, di ba? So definition-wise, population are all people that are of interest to the researcher. In other words, sila yung mga potential sources ng data mo sa iyong research. Pag fit sila dun sa iyong selection criteria, ibig sabihin, sila ang kinoconsider na population. Let's try. Kunyari, ang ating title is Case Study on Discipline of People with Phone Addiction. Now, from the data of Gomez et al. 2023, did you know that there are a total of 3.8 billion users of cell phone? And from that, there are 228 million people considered as nomophobic or people with phone addiction. Now, between the two, which is considered as our population? That is right. Yung 228 million ang ating population for the study. It's because sila yung nag-fit dun sa ating selection criterion, which is kailangan they are considered as people with phone addiction. Now let us try a small-scale study. Kunyari, ang ating research title ay Case Study on Discipline of Senior High School Adults of Plaridel Integrated National High School with Phone Addiction. This time, assuming that our data revealed there are 100 nomophobic adult students in the school. These 100 nomophobic adult students are not simply called as population. Rather, we term them as accessible population. Difference? Because these respondents or participants are within our reach. Now, if you have small, accessible, ibig sabihin mabilis mapuntahan, mabilis makuhanan ng data, cooperative population, well, suggestion is you go for the whole population dataset. In other words, lahatin mo na ang pasasagutan or kukuhanan mo ng data for the reason that it will give you reliable results. On the other hand, if you have big population, not easily accessible, then the suggestion is do not go for the whole population dataset. Do not cover them all. You just select a representative or subset of the population. Ibig sabihin yung mas maunti. This one is what we call as the sample. Yun nga lang, the downside is, it will give us weaker conclusion compared to the whole population dataset. So from the 100 students that we have as our population, we just pick 80 students whom we considered as our sample. Now, paano natin malalaman kung sapat na or hindi pa sapat yung sample size na meron tayo? In other words, yung bilang na sample na napili natin. Well, we have three options. The first one is we can refer to similar studies. In other words, basa kayo ng similar study, for example, same phenomenological research, and then you take a look how many sample size did they use in that study. So as reference, you can have similar studies as your basis. The second option is by formula. So first formula that we can use is the so-called Sloven's formula. So it is written as N equals capital N over 1 plus capital N times E squared, where N is considered as the sample size, capital N is the population size, and letter E is the so-called margin of error. And when it comes to margin of error, let's follow the standard, which is 5% or 0.05. So let's try to do Sloven's formula. Let's use the given population, which is 632. Kindly try to do this on your notebook. Do we have the same answer? And the answer is small n or sample size equals 245. Since we are talking of person, let's put it in a whole number instead of in decimal places. Now, if you prefer not to compute it manually or with the use of the calculator, then you can have another option, which is to go for online. You simply type in your search engine Sloven's formula online calculator, and there you have it. You will simply encode the population size, the confidence level, which is we go for 95% as our standard, and then we have the margin of error, which is the usual 5% or 0.05. And there you have it. It will automatically compute the sample size. Try nyo rin siya online. Another option for formula that we have is the Cochran's formula. It is written as n subscript 0 equals z squared pq over e squared, where e is our margin of error, weighted as 5% or 0.05. P is the estimated proportion, which we go for 50% or 0.5. And Q is 1 minus P or 0.5. And Z is the value found in the Z table. Well, Z represents our confidence level. On the table is the given confidence level with the corresponding Z-score already. So let's assume that you have chosen 95% as your confidence level. Then the corresponding Z-score is 1.960. Let us try to apply Cochran's formula given the confidence level 95%. So you simply substitute our numbers. And as a result, we have sample size for the confidence level of 95% is 384.16 or 384 as our sample. So if you notice when it comes to Cotran's formula, we do not really need the total number of our population. Unlike with Slovin's formula, we need to have the detail or the data on what is the total number of our population. Now, same with the Slovin's formula, worry no more because when it comes to Cotran's formula, there's also the corresponding online calculator. So once you type Cotran's formula online calculator, the following items will appear where you simply need to encode the precision level. Again, that is also the margin of error, confidence level, let's go for 95% as our standard, estimated proportion, which is 0.5, and you simply check the box if that is for a small population. And there you have it, your sample size. Why don't you try it online too? When it comes to the use of formula in finding the sample size, you simply need to remember the following symbols. Small n is for correct sample size. Capital N is for, that's right, population. E is for, no doubt, that's the margin of error or the 5%. P is for, good, if you haven't forgotten that, that's the proportion of population, which is equivalent to 0.5. And of course, the confidence level, which is how much? That's right. We go for 95% as our amount of certainty. Once we have the sample size, the question now is, how will you choose the samples? This will lead us to lesson number 3, which is sampling techniques. Sampling techniques, we have two major types of sampling. First one is the so-called probability sampling, and the second one is the opposite, which is the non-probability sampling. Under probability sampling, we have 4. So the reason why there are terms like simple random sampling, systematic random sampling, stratified random sampling, and cluster random sampling is because probability sampling means that all the population, members of the population have equal chance to be selected. On the other hand, there is no random under non-probability sampling because not all have equal chance. In other words, there's a researcher's choice or decision in choosing the sample. Qualitative, we commonly use the non-probability sampling techniques. So let's start with first one, convenience sampling. From the given definition, it involves the sample being drawn from that part of the population which is close to hand. So it's plain and simple. Once you have your population, you will simply choose the sample based on accessibility, which is the most convenient for you. Okay? Sampling, which is the purposive sampling, is defined as sample based on who the researcher thinks would be appropriate for the study. It's just like this. You have your population, and then based on the decision of the researcher, he or she will choose the sample. So basically, this one is more prone to bias. The third non-probability sampling technique that you can choose is the Cotte sampling. It is defined as getting samples from each stratum or group using similar sampling fraction, but non-randomly. So basically, quota sampling is for research which considers or gathers data from group. So what you have to do is, for example, you have two groups. One is for the male and then the other one is for the female. First instruction is you divide the number of the stratum by the population. So for instance, for the male, you have here 400 out of 900. That leads us to 44%. Whereas for the female, 500 divided by 900 equals 56%. Now let's compute for this one. Percentage times the sample size. Since our population is 900, so the sample size for 900 is 277. That makes it 44% or 0.44 for the male times 277. This yields us 122 as our sample size coming from the male. Whereas from the female, 56% or 0.56 times 277, this yields us 155. So if we add sample size from the male, which is 122, and then the sample size from the female, which is 155, total is our sample size, which is 277. And for the third instruction, you can now select the samples non-randomly. So for instance, for the male, you select the 122 samples by, it's either by convenience sampling or by purposive sampling. Same with the female, you select the 155 samples by purposive sampling or convenience sampling. Okay? Now the last type of the non-probability sampling, which is the snowball sampling. It is defined as having the identified potential sample who recommends another sample. So this one is specifically designed for a study wherein the respondents or participants are a little difficult to find. So to visualize, you have here one sample, and then you ask that person if he or she knows another potential respondent or participant. And then coming from him, he recommends or he or she recommends another sample until such time that you gathered your desired number of sample. Easy, no? For the last stretch, let's have the probability sampling techniques. Let us start with the simple random sampling. So it's very simple, just like what the name tells. Here, all members have equal chance of being selected randomly. So by randomly, what we mean by this is you can make use of fishbowl technique, so draw lots, or you can make it technical by using random number generator. And then whichever number appears, then they are the ones who will serve as your samples. Use a research randomizer like this, which is available online. You simply type in the Google or in the search box, research randomizer or random number generator, and something like this will appear, wherein you simply have to encode how many sets of numbers do you want to generate. So for instance, out of 900, you want to generate 277, which is your sample size. How many numbers per set? Then you simply type again 277. Number range, so you simply type 1 to 900. And there you have it. Something like this will appear. Okay? So the corresponding number represents your population. So why don't you try it online? The second probability sampling technique is the so-called systematic random sampling. It's systematic in the sense that you have to arrange the target population and then select elements at regular intervals. So by intervals, we compute this by, you simply divide the population by your target sample size. For instance, you have your 900, divided by 270, which yields 3.33. And by 3.33, what we mean is, so every third in line is our considered sample. Okay? The third probability sampling technique is the so-called stratified random sampling. So from the definition, it's just like the quota sampling. So you have here the group, and then you simply identify the sampling fraction, and then you get samples by random. So for instance, you have again two groups. One is for the male, one is for the female. So first step is you divide the number of people in your stratum by the number of your population. So we have here 400 divided by 900, 44%. For the female, it's 56%, coming from 500 divided by 900. And then you multiply the percentage by the sample size. For the male, since there are a total of 277 sample size, then 277 or 44% times 277 equals 122. For the female, it's 56% times 277 equals 155. The difference is just you select randomly. In other words, you will be selecting 122 from the male by either simple random sampling or systematic random sampling. Same with the female. You select the 155, it's either by simple random sampling or by systematic random sampling. Okay? We're going to the last of the probability sampling technique. We have here cluster random sampling. Here, it's notable because you divide the population into clusters or groups, then using random sampling to identify sampling units in group rather than individuals. By this, what we mean is, it's applicable for research which considers groupings. For instance, you have here three groups. One is from ABM, second is from UMS, third is from STEM. So basically, they are all ACADS. And when it comes to cluster random sampling, instead of selecting individual, you select from one whole group. In other words, when it comes to STEM, you will be selecting the 277 samples from the STEM alone, from the STEM group alone. Okay? I hope you're clear with that. Try out the concepts that we just learned a while ago. I'll be showing you definition, illustrations, or problems in paragraph format, and then all you have to do is identify which sampling technique was used. For instance, number 1, definition. It's the sample based on who the researcher thinks would be appropriate for the study. So based on your recall, what could be the answer? That's correct. It's the purposive sampling. Let's try another one. Based on the illustration, what sampling technique is this? Good answer. It is the convenience sampling. Now let's go for number 3. Now let us write the third item. Based on this description, all employees of the company were listed in alphabetical order. Every 10th person on the list was selected. So it's the 6, 16, 26, 36, and so on, until a sample of 100 people was reached. What sampling technique is this? And that's right, it's systematic random sampling. Well done. Now let's go for the last. Let's pose a little challenge. You want to gauge consumer interest in the new produce delivery service focused on dietary preferences. You divide the population into meat eaters, vegetarians, and vegans, drawing a sample of 1,000 people. Since the company wants to cater to all consumers, you need to get data from 285 to 350 people for each dietary group. You continue recruiting until you reach target participants for each subgroup. What do you think is this sampling technique? Three, two, one, and the answer is, you're right. It's the Cotes sampling. For any questions, once you have the question, you simply message your research advisor. Now let's have your performance task, which will be done by group. Now to write your manuscript, let's have the sampling and participants part. So all you need to do on your performance task is, first part, you simply clarify your selection criteria and then give your population. Second part, you identify here the sample and the sample size that you have computed. Please do identify what formula or what literature you have used as your basis in your sample size computation. And for the last one, you identify the sampling technique and the procedure that you used to identify your samples. So as basis of grading, you will be graded based on the accuracy of data, which is equivalent to 10 points, and the appropriateness of method, which is equivalent to 10 points. So total for your performance task, 20 points. Now do not forget to include, as you write down your sampling and participants, do not forget to include your research locale. Your research locale is just a description of the place or setting of the study. So you will be graded here based on how rich your description is. Now, this concludes our session for today. I hope you learned something on population and sample. This has been your teacher, Teacher Bird. See you again in our next session. Bye!